Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin, and a really busy week. And it was really interesting for me because when I'm doing the prep work to, kind of as we go back and forth on what we want to discuss, it kind of started out as a slow week, Dr. Lopkin, and that completely changed. It was really, I had only 4 talking points, and now you could go on 2 pages easily. So very funny. So very interesting. A case I did not follow, a news story. I really didn't follow that much. You followed it a lot more, was the Rittenhouse case. And I only saw a couple nights of it on the news, flicking through the channels, kind of preparing for our discussion. And I was really kind of unfamiliar. One thing that really struck me is the complete incompetency of the prosecution, but also I'm not defending I don't think he's the greatest guy in the world. I think he kind of provokes things. That's a whole different discussion. He wouldn't be my best buddy, this guy, but it's clearly self-defense. And yeah. I think, and the troubling matter, before I throw it out to you, what troubles me seems to be a case where it's almost like way back in the 1600s where it's mob rule. I think these jurors are sitting in the deliberation room and they're hearing the protest and they're scared shitless.
Oh, absolutely. I feel so bad for these jurors. I don't understand why they weren't sequestered. But right now, and I should point out to our listeners that as we're recording this, the jury is still deliberating. So they're looking at this evidence, and the evidence clearly acquits Rittenhouse.
Clearly.
The prosecutor's own witnesses said it was self-defense. The video shows it's self-defense. So they are sitting there caught between the evidence, this is what they need to rule on, and the fact that outside the courtroom, the National Guard is preparing for riots. The media has decided Rittenhouse is guilty. I find it amazing how the media made this about race. Rittenhouse is white. The 2 victims are white. In fact, the 2 victims, one's a pedophile, the other's a career criminal. And yet they're painting Rittenhouse as a white supremacist and trying to make this case about race.
Well, it's not even the media, which I agree with you, by the way. It's the Biden administration. They first called him a white How are you a white supremacist when you killed 2 white people? Anyway, but this administration, there's no rhyme or reason to any of it. We already know that. And then they kind of double back and say, and this is an interesting comment. I'd love your input on this. Is they say, well, we don't put up with vigilantes. Almost a way to wink and a nod that, okay, if you protest, we're not condoning. I think that's a valid comment.
Yeah, I mean, the comment about vigilantes was almost an afterthought. This was, if you watched the case all along, the prosecutor kept changing his theory about what happened as his own witnesses shot him out of the water. And the prosecutor, I think he got his law degree out of a Cracker Jack box.
Oh, no, he got it out of Matchbook University.
Yes. At one point, he tries to insinuate that because Rittenhouse used his right to remain silent, that showed his guilt. And the judge ripped him a new one over that. Then he actually aims and points the AR-15 at the jury. Nobody
with his hand on the trigger.
Yes, with his hand on the trigger. No one who knows anything about gun safety would ever do this. Finally, there is now a request for a mistrial by the defense because it turns out the prosecutor withheld evidence.
Yes, they put it on a zip drive without really indicating where it was. And also, how dumb, I'm sorry, just dumb and out of touch can you be? Especially what happened on the movie set 2 weeks ago. You're pointing a
Yes.
with your finger on the trigger. Some people said it was almost a kind of almost, I don't think it was, like a threat to the jury. I just think it's stupidity.
Well, no, I think it was meant to frighten the jury. I think he has lost his legal battle. Now he wants to say to the jury, well, put yourself in these two men's shoes. How scared must they have been with an
I would agree. I
AR-15 pointed
agree.
at them?
Yeah,
And
he's
the fact
lost
of
the
the matter
rational
is,
argument. Yes, agreed.
yeah, and the fact is, he ignores the fact that Rittenhouse actually had a gun pointed at him at the time of the shooting. So, yeah,
but let's look at a more serious matter. You and I, again, I don't know the person involved. I think has some real problems. That's my own personal opinion. But legally, it was clearly self-defense. But are we at a point where you look at, people that menstruate? You're looking at like facts. Do facts really even make a difference anymore? Are we like now in an emotionally based society and mob rule that clearly the facts are the facts? These people, and I agree with, they're probably shitting in their pants. People have taken photographs of them, and then there's also, we live in this society now that some of these advocates and professional rabble rousers basically brag that they can be at any major city, within an hour full bore. That's kind of screwed up.
It really is. And, this is ongoing now because you have the folks who are preparing to riot in Genosha. You had also earlier the head of New York City's Black Lives Matter threatened that there would be bloodshed if the new mayor reinstated the anti-crime unit. You have these folks holding riots and bloodshed over people's heads instead of actually, doing the right thing and working with the police or working through the legal system.
You look at the people involved, even the Rittenhouse case, they don't give a crap about black lives. These people are basically professional criminals, number one, and professional rabble rousers. Was this guy had a job at MIT? Are you kidding me?
Right. These folks are not protesters. And I think that's actually the key to all of this. The whole reason that the media went after Rittenhouse as a white supremacist and a racist when this had nothing to do with the race is that if he is found not guilty, it ruins their narratives that Black Lives Matter was peaceful protesters. Because if he's innocent by way of self-defense, it meant there was something to defend against, and it wasn't the peaceful protests that the media wants everybody to focus on.
In a rational world, I would agree with you because your analysis of it is right on, but I already know what's going to happen. They'll get blown out the window. The white supremacy, especially like MSNBC, they make CNN look like a rational news organization. And, and the professional rabble rousers, I think it'll still, even though the facts point in a different way, I think you're going to have hell on the streets in Wisconsin.
Oh, no, I think
not guilty.
Yes, if Rittenhouse is declared not guilty, there will be riots. There's no question about that. And it's the liberal left that's pushing this agenda, trying to cause riots. I mean, you have MSNBC calling African American Republicans the black face of white supremacy.
Well, I do believe, and I honestly do believe this, and you saw it in the Virginia elections and almost in New Jersey. You know something? It's the Republicans' best assets in spite of themselves.
Yes.
Because people have had enough of this shit. You can go a bridge to America is a very tolerant country and a very self-effacing country, meaning we blame ourselves first and we look, well, we're not as great as Europe, blah, 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 or we're smarter than them, blah, blah. The list can go on. But then you get to a bridge too far and this whole racial crap is just nonsense.
Yeah, no, when you have Bill Maher week after week telling the Democrats that they need to stop this, they've gone too far. When you've got Jon Stewart talking about how this is ridiculous, and now moderate Democrats in the House are referring to themselves as the normal Democrats.
Yeah, I think this is a party that have really shot themselves in the foot. And speaking of shooting themselves in the foot, so Biden signs the infrastructure bill, an accomplishment. We can get into what it really is going to do, but $1 trillion bill is $1 trillion bill. There should be some momentum, some spark in the whole situation. No. Number one, he had a rally, if you call it a rally. I've had bigger rallies, okay, at my friend's keg party. He had like 6 people at some bridge in New Jersey. And I'm telling you, it's getting scarier and scarier. Once he's off script, he literally said, and I'm paraphrasing, but not much, that yes, this is a very important bill. And he says, I'm not kidding. I'm serious. I'm serious. This is serious. This is real. If you're driving on a bridge and it catches fire and falls in, and then people can't rescue you from the fire because the bridge is falling in. I mean, no, he goes, no, I'm serious.
Yeah,
the guy
he just babbles.
What?
He just babbles.
It's unbelievable. But the funny thing is, and what I really meant, I just had to add that in because I watched that and I go, this is scary. So you think you're going to get a bump, 5 point, everything in America, in politics, you get a 5-point bump by doing something right, whatever. He went from the Republicans being 4 points up in that generic poll a week ago to what is it now, 23?
23 points up. Yes, it is the largest advantage the Republicans had since the Reagan administration.
Yes, which is an interesting point real quick, because I think the Reagan administration, because of that big advantage he had, that's why the Democrats did what they did with wokeism and all this other stuff. But that's another issue because it was their only way to fight back. And quite frankly, did a hell of a job of it. But Biden is in big trouble and his administration's in big trouble. It's not exactly the love vote between Kamala and him. In fact, there was a Rose Garden ceremony about the signing of the infrastructure bill. Yep. They introduced her under a wrong name, and that kind of that wouldn't happen in a real event.
They didn't introduce her under the wrong name. They skipped her. They introduced the next speaker, ignoring her, and she would not walk off the podium because she was determined to make a speech.
Okay, that's much worse. And quite frankly, when I don't get something, I don't get something. I thought they just made an error by announcing the next speaker. No, so they dissed her. But that gets to the bigger issue, which I am on target on, and that is there's growing discontent with her. And they say that actually Steve Jobs' widow is the one that really propped her up with her, less than a point accomplishments in the primary. But there's inner office memos and discussions that, and Buttigieg is one of them, that they want to really get rid of her. She's a huge liability. She went to France, and I wish, and we'll do this eventually, I hope, in other words, have the ability to play back audio. She was in France, and her speech was not as bad as Biden because he's senile, but it was like, we all must work together because together we're together. And if you're together, we'll always be together. It was like, what?
Yeah.
She's totally incompetent. And I think she's a liability to an already administration that's going down the crapper faster than Roto-Rooter.
Well, here's the thing. Every time Harris opens her mouth, she is an embarrassment to the administration and an embarrassment to the country.
Yes.
She laughs at inopportune moments. she can't deal with people. When they wanted her to talk with kids, they hired actors. Let's not forget, she pulled out of the presidential election because she didn't have enough momentum to get to the primaries.
Primary, she had like zero.
No.
Her only good moment was when she dissed Biden, which he's not a fan of, about her. She was once on a bus to basically calling him a racist. But I believe that they need something. I don't think she's going to walk away, but it's just indicative of being totally incompetent. Of all the people they could have, and if you had someone competent, whoever that might be, at least you have some kind of a breath of fresh air, but it's like dumber and dumber.
Yeah, there is talk that if Biden runs again, they want to have somebody else as vice president. Here's what I think is actually going on. The Democrats did not appreciate how incompetent she is. They gave her this position knowing that Biden is mentally unfit, and they thought this was their way of getting somebody from the far left into the Oval Office. However,
he was a placekeeper.
Once she was there, and I think she knew this, I think they told her this flat out, but once she was there, she showed herself to be so incompetent that the party went, we can't do that. We can't put her in the big seat. So now she's upset because she's realized they're not going to put her in the Oval Office. And now she's throwing a temper tantrum. Biden, I don't think, has ever forgiven her for going after him in the debates.
Yes.
So there's no love lost there. And I think, Biden probably wasn't even aware that that's the whole reason that she was there, was to take his place. But even more importantly, Biden has actually said this. He has, and he's been very proud of this, that his administration ticked off boxes. He chose these people because she's an African American woman, because he's gay, because, rather than actually hiring people that were competent, he ticked off diversity boxes, and now it's coming back to bite him in the ass.
I would say the only thing I would argue, I'll use that term a little bit about, I think the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party was in their apex during the time of his ascension. They're no longer there, but I don't think it's a Democratic Party. I'll cut them a break. I thought it was the radical, which owned the party at that particular point in time, putting their person in, knowing that Biden was a useful idiot.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
Okay. So anyway, looking at more incompetency, the gentleman who was in charge of border security for Biden testified in front of the Senate, and he got electrocuted. Didn't know any facts and admitted some very scary, terrifying, that he says that being equitable and humane takes precedent over a secure border. Basically, also, beyond suggesting, basically saying that his agenda is to legalize at least 11 million illegals. Another dangerous radical, because Biden was asleep at a switch. Radicals were in control when he was in the transition period. This guy's incompetent. He proved he was incompetent. And under the fire, and you had Karl Rove, who's no friend of Trump or closed borders. He's kind of a globalist himself, was saying this guy was totally out of his league.
Yeah, Alejandro Mayorkas is the Homeland Security Secretary. And prior to him being the Homeland Security Secretary, he was the chief of police down at one of the cities by the border. And his own police officers have come forward and said when he was chief of police, he used to say that he didn't think of himself as somebody who, as a chief of police, he was an advocate for open borders.
Does that
This
surprise you?
this is who they put in charge of Homeland Security. Meanwhile, the Border Patrol has reported literally hundreds of criminals passing that have been caught, terrorists that have been identified. And these are just the ones that got caught. They have no idea how many got past them.
Well, these people also, a lot of them have re-entered, which is disturbing. I would have to make a prediction, and this is not exactly a Mensa candidate moment, but if any of these people do anything, if they're traced, let's say putting a dirty bomb in New York or whatever, something of significant, a significant event, then Biden's completely finished. It's over.
Well, there have already been not events like dirty bombs, but so far several of the folks that they know came through, and these aren't people that got away. These were folks that were processed, have been arrested for murder. So we know that even the ones that are getting caught, there are criminals in there that are causing, an uptick in crime. Like, we need more of an uptick in crime.
Yeah, I got you. But my only point is that because we have a biased corporate media, it needs to be something like Biden's dementia is raised to the level that they can't deny it anymore. It's got to be an undeniable event, a mass shooting. I'm not, condoning it. Something, and it will, given the odds, probably going to happen someday. Hopefully, but hopefully not. But you do the math. It's not beyond the realm of possibility. And then talking about wokeism, and we talked about colleges and spending 50, 60 grand on educations and lesbian rights, and who even knows what's going on now, right? They have, I put it in quotations, professor, and you know his name, I don't.
Yeah, you're referring to Alan Walker.
Yeah, looks like someone who's completely mentally stable to me, no question about it. And he came up with a book, In the Shadows. Again, now pedophiles are the victim. They're not the victimizer. They're living in the shadows. And he came up with a term that basically is called MAP, and that is basically saying that there's that it's all people that have an attraction for underage people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, and it's minor attractive personality disorder. This is what happens with wokeism, though. This is not. I mean, it's not just him. If it's not him, it would have been someone else.
Yeah, this is essentially an attempt to normalize pedophilia. This is someone who has gone so woke, and let's just give Walker teaches sociology and criminal justice at Old Dominion University.
A once prestigious school, by the way.
Yeah, and he is now pushing forward the theory that there's nothing wrong with being attracted to children. Now, my first instinct is that he must be a pedophile, because who other than a pedophile would put forward this theory?
Yeah, well, this was, everything. The guy looks like a kook, or now I think he's a man. He's a transgender. I don't know exactly. I really don't care. But I saw him on several interviews. He looks like not the icon of mental stability. And if he was talking about some crazy shit like they all say about, people who menstruate, and had a book on that, how men can think they're a woman and menstruate. It's fine. It's all shits and giggles, right? But you're talking about pedophilia. Kids commit suicide over. This is no friggin' joke. Okay, lives are ruined. I went to junior high school with a kid. I didn't know what happened to him, but I found out years later. He was assaulted by the whack job principal at that time, and his life was never the same. He had everything going for him. Good looking kid, the list goes, a smart kid, and he turned out to be he never committed suicide, but essentially he did suicide by drugs.
Yeah, no, to give you a little background on what Walker is trying to do. His book is called A Long Dark Shadow:
Yeah,
Minor Attracted People and Their Pursuit of Dignity. So he's trying to give pedophiles dignity. And he's insisting that it's important to use that terminology instead of pedophile because
so you don't insult them.
Yes, because it's less stigmatizing. No, these people need to be stigmatized. Do you really want your child, being with a pedophile?
No, but let's also lay blame. Okay, this guy's a kook, and kooks are kooks. There's a billion kooks out there, right? He looks like an idiot. I don't know where he got his degree from. He probably got in on some affirmative action case, to be quite frank. He doesn't seem like he's extremely intelligent to me. But how about Old Dominion? What the F is going? You hired this son of a bitch? What are you, stupid? You didn't monitor what the hell he was doing?
Well,
I mean, shame on and I'm paying $70,000 to go to that shit school.
In their defense, they did not know he was going to do this when they hired him, and they have put him on leave.
Well, yeah, that's thanks after the fact.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't punish him for something he hasn't done, so of course it's after the fact. But yeah, it's they've put him on leave. It just boggles.
No one sat in and observed his classroom or looked at what he was publishing. No, I don't think it's carte blanche for the university. Yeah, I get it. Shit just didn't happen overnight. No, I mean, they didn't look at, they hired someone. They didn't observe his classroom. They didn't go over his curriculum. Well, shame on them.
Well, this as far as I know, this wasn't in his curriculum. This was a book that he published separately, and he just gave this interview on November 8th where he came out with all of this. So it's only been a few days since it came out, and they did remove him from the classroom immediately.
Well, mea culpa, because thank God they did. You know something? At some schools, he might get an honorary doctorate. You never know the way things are going.
Yeah, UC Berkeley would have kept him.
Exactly, and promoted him head of the entire department. So our, I think it's our Treasury Secretary who was up for nomination. Another winner. This you can't make up. You cannot make this up. She was arrested, I believe, in the 90s for shoplifting, retail theft. I assume that's shoplifting. And she also, genius, again, I don't know where she went to school, but again, we talked about sometimes the more I live, the more I think some of these higher education bastions of brilliance are not so much the case. She basically said it would be a good thing that the energy sector goes bankrupt because that would make way for more of a green agenda. Huh?
Yeah.
What?
This is Omarova, who even the Democrats who are in the Senate have gone, yeah, I don't think she's being confirmed. I mean, how can you nominate somebody for the Treasury? I mean, this is her, and technically the position she was nominated for was controller of the currency within the Treasury Department. So you want the person who's in charge of money wanting to abolish banks and force oil and gas companies into bankruptcy. This is not a legitimate nominee. This is a bad joke. And unfortunately, that just seems to be who he put up. Nothing but bad jokes.
Wait. I have to disagree on one thing. It's not he. My friends say that to me. Oh, he didn't do any of this. It was a hard left socialist group that took control of a willing stooge with no one at home, and they put in who they wanted to put in, and she's one of them. How do you have a devout communist ahead of your Treasury Secretary? Jesus, come on.
Actually, I'm going to go a little further. I don't know that he's a willing dupe. I think this is basically elder abuse, and they have taken advantage of a demented individual.
Oh, there's no question. And I'll reference back to what I saw last night. If it was done by a sixth grader, you would say this kid's lacking. The whole thing about the bridge catching fire, you're like, what the hell are you talking? No, I agree with you. He's not a willing dupe. He's a dupe. And they took advantage of him. Now, in closing, we had the January 6th hearing, and that's been in the news for various reasons. Steve Bannon, and then just recently, participant Jacob Lamberth. He goes by another name, but he's the guy with the Viking hat, I guess you could say. Got 41 months, over 3 years in jail. Your take, Dr. Lopkin?
Yeah, I think the 41 months was a good sentence. That, he deserved that.
He deserved that,
But
yeah.
I think that's, justice being served.
Sure, fine. I agree with
what
that.
gets me is, going after Steve Bannon with contempt of Congress. First of all, Bannon hadn't even been in the Trump administration at the time of January 6th. And it's important to remember that the FBI has investigated the January 6th incident and cleared Donald Trump. So what's this investigation? This is being done by Congress, and it's being led by Adam Schiff, who lied to the American people over and over again about collusion with Russia.
Knowingly lied.
Yes. And who just said on television in an interview that he's okay, knowing that the Steele dossier is fake, he's okay with the fact that they went after Trump with this fake evidence. So this is who's pushing the January 6th investigation. This is basically because Donald Trump lives rent-free in the heads of Democrats. He is the boogeyman. They're blaming him for everything that's gone wrong with their party instead of taking responsibility. And this is just another way of them going, oh, it's all Donald Trump. Trump.
Because they know he's a vilified figure in both the Democratic and to some degree Republican sectors, although he has some good approval numbers. He's just a lightning rod to keep the base energized. And another thing is, yes, he was emotionally, let's just say, vacant, and there were some disturbing things about his maturity. But his policies were embraced by if you could keep his shit together, he'd still be president. And they're scared to death because juxtaposed from the Democratic psychopathic socialist agenda and Trump's agenda, they will lose hands down. The only reason they won the election in 2020 is because, first of all, the pandemic and Trump's handling, not the logistics, but his face to the public was a little less than great. But it's also 4 years of being under investigation and knowing, being impeached and having Jeff Sessions as your numbnuts attorney general. Yeah, that's why he lost. And it really, no one shed CNN, no corporate media doesn't shed any light. This was a coup attempt. Everyone knew it was bullshit. A janitor reading it would know it was a friggin' bunch of shit.
But here's the thing. Because they're still going after him, because they can't get out of their own way, even diehard Democrats at this point are going, you know what? He's not in office anymore. Enough is enough. We can't keep blaming Trump for everything that's going wrong. And now Biden has just delivered failure after failure after failure that that nobody can blame on Trump. None of this anything to do with Trump. So even the diehard Democrats are going, enough is enough. We can't keep blaming Trump. And again, to go back to Bill Maher has actually said, we have to stop blaming Trump.
I agree with him, and it's I use the analogy that it's someone who's like out of a relationship, a marriage or a long-term relationship, and they once were grooving life or whatever, and 10 years after they're down in the dumps and they're blaming Jane, Fred, or Nancy or whoever for their tales of woe. Well, yeah, a year after, yeah, I get it, but 10 years, it's the same thing. He's not in office. And by the way, the thing that saves Trump is his tweets are gone. And you know something? If social media deleted his tweet feed 2 years ago, he'd still be president.
Probably. I mean, yeah, it's because he doesn't have that opportunity to stick his foot in his mouth. Yes. Yeah. So now it's just the Democrats going, oh, Trump, Trump, Trump. And you saw what happened in Virginia. Youngkin made the campaign about the needs of the people of Virginia. McAuliffe kept trying to make the campaign about Trump. And people went, no, it's not about Trump. It's about what we need, what's good for the state. And McAuliffe got his ass handed to him.
Yes, but I also think I like your opinion on this. The final comment, if you will, we'll leave it with you. I'm thinking less and less that Trump's actually going to run. I just think his sex appeal is starting, and I think you have people that have some balls like Christie. I'm not saying I'm a fan of it, that are saying, no, I think it's time to move on. I'm not so, which is a great thing for the Republican Party, because if Trump does not run, hands down, unless some crazy thing happens and Biden gets his brain back and Kamala becomes a Mensa candidate, the Republicans win in a landslide. So I'm really grooving the fact and hoping, getting my fingers crossed, that Trump does go away, because there's a lot of other candidates, and there's no one in the Democratic Party that could ever hold a candle to anyone that's like remotely competent.
No, they don't have a deep bench. And I think we're going to see what happens next year, because more and more Republicans are looking at the Youngkin campaign as a blueprint, because he didn't say anything bad about Trump. He didn't diss Trump, but he also wasn't buddy-buddy with him. So he didn't alienate Trump voters. Trump voters came out for him, but he broadened that base. And I think you're going to see senators and congresspeople do that next year, and that's going to push. I think Trump is going to realize that he's better off working in the background.
We agree 100%, and you did it much more articulately than I did. That is the fact. He's going to realize, even an egocentric person like, getting a little old, I'm 70, whatever he will be at that point. Time for me, I have a whole place in my life. I'm the kingmaker, and people, all you got to do is say, yes, Donald, yes, Donald. Do not challenge him. Christie's making a bad mistake because he wrote a book that's dissing Trump. He's finished. But you just placate with him.
You have to remember that Christie and Trump are actually friends. They've known each other for years. So if anybody's going to come out and tell Trump that, hey, you got to cool it, Christie's the right person to do it.
Yeah, but writing a book about how he didn't call you when you were with COVID or under the effects of COVID, and it was Melania that called him, and Trump was only into his own agenda, meaning, am I going to get blamed for your infection? That's needless. If you have eyes on the presidency, I don't really give a shit if Christie wins or not. Don't really care. Be happy if he won versus Biden or numbnuts, believe me. But don't go overextend yourself to insult him is a mistake.
Yeah, I don't know if Christie is a great candidate for president. I mean, right now I'm in the anybody but Biden camp,
God.
So we'll see who comes up. But
I'm voting for the milkman.
Right, but Chris Christie would not be my first choice.
No. All right, well, another great edition of Carnivore Bites, and you can maybe talk about all the touch points people can listen to us.
Yeah, you can find us each week at xvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Carnivore Radio website. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. Thank our listeners.
We'll see you next time.